Good morning. If we were going to talk about Chan101, what is important is that we have to have more of an understanding of what self is, because we have to look at the subject and say, exactly what are we doing here? This is something that when one is a novice, we have that question. And as a novice, oftentimes what we do is we are simply just trying to quiet all the noise in the mind. We don't know anything beyond that. We just know that it's very, very noisy. And when we sit to meditate, we just have a lot of thoughts going by. And we've discovered that when we quiet the mind, it's peaceful, it's calm, it's comfortable. But then when we get off the cushion, the thoughts come back. And we cannot associate the sitting meditation with our everyday practice. In fact, there's no practice there. It's just, okay, that was good. And then we begin to learn this kind of an unfulfilling practice. It's unfulfilling because it is just simply an evasive maneuver of the mind just to be quiet. That is why when people begin to meditate, they, after they're able to calm the mind and overcome physical discomforts, they become drowsy. They become drowsy because this quietness, this peacefulness, this relaxation of the mind is something that they cannot do when they go to sleep. And so seeing the condition in this way, the mind just automatically says, oh, this is very, very comfortable. I feel so relaxed. Let's take a nap. Why? Because that's the way you should go to sleep. In the first place is that you have to practice sleepy Chan. Please do not practice sleepy Chan at this moment. Okay, I'm talking about the sleep, but some of you might start drowsing off. Use that when you go to sleep. Shifu had a very easy way to practice sleepy Chan, and that was just say, I'm going to sleep, I'm going to sleep, I'm going to sleep. And in this way, it's an endless loop that the mind is preoccupied with this, and then it will eventually fall asleep. To me, when I have a difficulty to sleep, I will just recite the Buddha's name. I just keep reciting the Buddha's name, reciting the Buddha's name. And the Buddha comes along with me in my sleep. And if I dreamed or whatever, the Buddha's going to be there. So I don't have to worry about anything that happens in a dream, except for this dream that we're doing right now. My major worries in this dream is that I'm not proficient enough to be a teacher that can present the Dharma in a way that I cannot set into motion the delivery of all sentient beings. But I do my best. This is essentially what we do when we begin to practice. We start realizing that there's more to this than just simply quieting the mind. We quiet it in a very artificial way. It's as if one would be in their room and then a ghost appear in front of them and they just close their eyes. I don't want to see this. I don't want to see this. And then the ghost is gone because they don't see the ghost anymore. But this is a very artificial way, and it will not produce a delivery of that sentient being. And we have to talk about that because it's a very tricky subject in terms of saying, what is the delivery of a sentient being? Because I make the vow to deliver innumerable illusory sentient beings. And then you go, yes, what? What do you mean illusory sentient beings? Then what are we doing this? No, it's like we're lining up ghosts and doing it. No, ghosts are sentient beings too, but they're illusory sentient beings. So we have to, from the very beginning, enter into the fundamentals of Chan. Without this foundation, we cannot meditate in the proper way, and we do not see the world in the proper way. It's difficult for us to see the world in as it is, because we are within the world. We're not separate from the world, but we are oblivious to how the world appears. We think that the world appears in our consciousness, and we really don't understand the mind matrix in which this world is projected on. So we take the image for the reality. It would be that if you have a television set at your house, and you decided to put on some program of nature, a forest, and you're there watching it, and you can hear the birds chirping, but you would not mistake that picture for the reality of the forest. You would say, this is very beautiful, but this nevertheless is illusory, because there's not a forest behind my living room wall. But this is how we view the world. We view it as a projection in our own mind. But there's an extra aspect to it that is not necessary, and which causes a misunderstanding of what is appearing. Does anybody know what that is that keeps us from being able to see things clearly? Anybody? Go ahead, Ian. I can see you right there. If you can unmute him or unmute yourself.
Self.
The self. The self. This is the tricky one. Thank you very much. It's very, very tricky. If we do not see the world in the correct way, all we doing is just trying to polish up this self, trying to make them behave, to be a good citizen in this dream world. It's very, very subtle. I can talk about that, and in fact, that is what the Buddha was teaching from the very beginning, was this idea. But it's very interesting, because when we talk about the self, people say, okay, well, there's no self. But that's not what the Buddha taught. That's not what was in the scriptures, or the definition of anatta. That definition is very interesting. It doesn't say no self. It says not self. This is very, very different. Because when we say not self, then we say, well, then what is it? And then I respond, what is? Where do you take that question to? So those of you who are soon to be and already Dharma teachers, this is how you respond to questions like this, is the question, you turn it back around, so that the person has a chance to turn the mind's eye inward and see exactly what is being projected, and then to come to the realization that this notion of self is also a projection. It is not real. It is difficult for us to understand this, and the Buddha understood this from the very, very beginning. When we say not self, it's to guide you in the proper way, and to looking directly at mind. But if we say no self, if there's no self, anatman, then it's not enough. But all that was a device to divert the attention away from the clinging of an ego, personality, or life and being. But the answer is not decipherable in words. It has to be discovered by each and every one of you. So I can only talk about it, but I cannot present it to you. It would be so easy if we could do that. But it's like you're there, and I don't know if you ever had a child or a mate or someone that you had to wake up, and you're wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. and you can't wake them up. No, it's very interesting. Some people can wake up like that, and others, they're just slumbering, and you can't wake them up. And so they have to want to wake up. And so if they can wake up, then they'll see that they were caught up in a dream. But without that, then they maintain this dream. This is unfortunate. But the only thing we can do is try to wake them up. So we are in the dream with them, and we're sitting there with them on the couch, looking at the TV set with the forest there. And we just look over at them and say, you know, this picture here is not real. Oh, yes, it is. I can see, I can hear the birds. I can see the light coming through the trees. Everything there, it's real. No, it's not real. No, it is. It is. You are in a dream. No. Not only that, but you're the dream. What? There's a bit of fear there, a bit of misunderstanding. We don't know this. And so it startles us. And as startled as when Shakyamuni Buddha told Ananda, and Ananda finally tried to figure it out and say, I see that which is investigates, that's mind. And the Buddha yelled at him, Ananda, that's not your mind. What? And he was shocked. He was so shocked. He had a fear in him, a confusion, because he was certain that there was this person there, that this person was in fact the Buddha mind. But we don't understand that. We can't see that until we let go of it. Now, Ananda's fault was one which was because he was so intelligent. He had the ability to remember everything the Buddha taught him, but he never processed it. He never contemplated it. He never saw the immediacy of looking into mind, only to gather up all of this information like a librarian. He didn't want to do mind work. And even though the Buddha exhorted all of the assembly to look into it, he thought it was enough just to carry all of the Buddha Dharma with him. But we understand that the Buddha Dharma is itself not real. I mentioned that before of the three jewels, that the Buddha Dharma belongs to this side and along with the Sangha. Only the Buddha is the permanent, is the truth. Yet it's very, very interesting, because when we talk about the Dharma, we use the capital letter D for Dharma, and that distinguishes it from the lowercase use of Dharma with a small d. And we say, okay, well, we understand it. But you know, that used to bother me a lot. I used to think, well, why do they use the term Dharma with a capital D and then a lowercase d to indicate phenomena, and then Dharma is the teachings and the ultimate teachings of everything? And then I ran across something that said the Dharma with the little d, that Dharma, it belongs to the Buddha. It is why it is there. We're clear about it, that we're clear that everything that appears in mind appears in accordance with Pratika Samappada, causes and conditions never fail. Everything that's appearing is manifested, is produced, is the fabric of mind itself. We have to be clear about this. If we're not clear, then we see this Dharma and we want to sweep it. If we're watching the picture on the wall, maybe we look and say, oh, this forest is messy. Maybe we should rake the leaves in the forest. And you think that you're raking the leaves in the forest. You're not. If you go up to the picture and you touch it, then you start realizing, wait, this picture here, I can't penetrate it. It's flat. It doesn't look real. If I look behind the TV set, there's nothing there. What is there? What is this picture? Where did it come from? There's this little wire. Maybe if I follow it, I can follow it to nirvana. This is the way people practice. But if you're able to practice and actually see that and say, why is this picture appearing? What brought forth this picture? And more importantly, what is it projected on? This is Chan101. So whenever I meet someone who's new to the practice or never meditated, never heard anything, never even knew anything other than their knowledge of the Buddha is this fat gentleman in the front of a Chinese restaurant that has a polished belly from everybody rubbing it. And that's all they know about that. I talk to them and I don't say, oh, we have the three jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, impermanence, all of this stuff, because they say, well, that sounds like a religion. What I do instead is that I ask them to picture an apple. So as you're here, you picture an apple in your mind. Not a hard thing to do, right? So you can picture the apple in your mind. Don't go overboard with it. It's just let's say a red apple. If you want to add a leaf, that's fine, or a stem. Don't go too far with it, okay? It's just a red apple. We're not concerned about the apple. What we're concerned about is precisely where is this apple seen? That is our practice. Where is this apple? Where do you see it? I would say 90% of the people who are completely new to Buddhism says, I see it right here. And this is why the Shurangama Sutra in the very first book of it went to great pains for the Buddha to refute that kind of a notion. To me, I would say, well, then that would mean that you would have an apple in your head. And so then you go and they have to think about that. And sometimes I'll go and talk to people about this and I'll see them a week later and they're a bit perturbed at me. And they said, you know, you put this in my mind. Where did this apple come from? Where did the apple come from? And they want to know. They want to know where that apple, what is it suspended on? What is it projected on? They cannot know conceptually, but some of them, if they have a deep root, in that moment, they can suddenly awaken to the practice, not awaken to enlightenment, but at least awaken to the practice. And when they awaken to the practice, in that moment, then they are practitioners. They want to know. So when we look at things, we have to see them in this way. Now, I don't start with project yourself in your mind and where does that appear? But you could do that as well. Exactly where in there, in that cavern that you call a skull, do you find yourself? Is it here? Is it in the back? Is it in the front? precisely where do you see your mind? Where is it? And you might come up with some kind of a clever response to it, but it's still nevertheless conceptual. So as we begin to practice this, we have we have to explore, contemplate. This is not easy, and it's not easy for people to understand what contemplation means. It is not something that we're used to. So that's probably the first hurdle, is this idea of just sitting, mo chao, just sitting. You just sit. So what are you doing? You're just sitting. Or what else do you do? Are you sitting? Yeah, just sit. What do you mean? Am I sitting here waiting for a bus to come? So you sit like this with one eye looking. You're looking at your watch. I wonder when the bus comes. The enlightenment bus. No, you'd be more likely that a bus full of bozos would come, a bunch of clowns come, and you'd probably hop on it because you're bored of just sitting. You're just sitting there. After a while, you feel very Forrest Gumpish. Just sitting. It's got to be something worth it. This is stupid. I'm just sitting. Better to think about something. Better to think about something fantastical. And so when you think that way, then you begin to manufacture incidences of enlightenment. This is a very much of a pity, because all of a sudden you're off the method, and now you're thinking about, wow, this is really nice. There's all these lights going in all sorts of different ways. I must be enlightened. No, just sit, contemplate. The more you contemplate, when you are contemplating, you are properly using the Buddha mind. You are not creating the karma, negative karma, that can occlude the clearness of the mind. But we want to say, oh, well, what is this clearness of the mind? I want to know what this is. So this must be clear. You know, and so you say, Gilbert, I was sitting there, and the Manjushri appeared before me, and it was so clear. It was, oh my gosh, it was so clear. He was right there. And you think in this way, and you're developing all of these kinds of constructs in your mind as to what you think this is. But it isn't in this way. So I will tell you a story. This one is like story number 36 for those following along who've been with me for a while. And that's that there was at a temple, there were these young monks, and they were all sitting there meditating. And as they were meditating, they noticed the master sitting in front of him, and he was rowing the boat, or snoring. It's one of the greatest fears of teachers, is to fall asleep in front of their students. It does happen, though. No. But when the master opened his eyes, he saw all of the little monks looking at him. And he's going, what are you doing? What are you doing? Why are you looking at me? And the one of the young ones says, Shifu, you were asleep. I was not asleep. You were snoring. I wasn't snoring. And he says, well, then what were you doing? He was going, I was talking to Manjushri. And the little ones looked around. That's pretty good. So in the afternoon, it was a very warm summer day. So all the little monks were beginning to get drowsy, including the one that had asked the question. So he was starting to row the boat. And so the master came by, being the master, and whacked him. And he got startled and woke up. And he said, Shifu, why did you hit me? And he said, I hit you because you were asleep. He says, I wasn't sleeping. He says, of course you were sleeping. You were making noises. And he said, I too was talking to Manjusri. And the master said, if you were talking to Manjusri, what did he tell you? And the little one says, he says he doesn't know you. So just a little humor to break up, because this is kind of a hard one. But if you ever run into that situation, you know, unless it's me, you know, you can pull that one out of your bag of tricks. So I'm kind of giving you a kind of a push start into what we're going to talk about today. But any part of the lectures that I give you an opportunity to be able to penetrate the sutras, to penetrate the understanding. But this comes from a contemplation that we sit. If we're there sitting watching the forest view on the big screen TV in our living room, and we just sat quietly with no thinking, eventually we would come to see that this forest scene is a fabrication. And eventually that one who views it is a fabrication. This is the subtlest part, is extracting from all of this consciousness, is that it's not the consciousness that is off. It is the self that attaches to the consciousness and says, I am looking at this. I am seeing this. And in this kind of a way of trying to see things in this way, it botches everything up, because it is ignorant as to why these appearances are coming. So with that, I want to go into and take you now, put on your swimsuit, because I'm going to take you into the deep end. But let's see what you can do with this and see how this works. And this is from the Maha Prajnaparamita Sutra. And have to kind of go up enough to get to the part that will be the payoff for you. So the Buddha had asked Manjusri, do you see voice, hear, precepts? So he says, do you see voice, hear, precepts? Do you see that there's a precept? For the Sangha, it's a Vinaya, but to us, it's these precepts that we hold. Do you see this? And so Manjusri said, yes, I see them. And the Buddha asked, how do you see them? Oh, right off the bat, he's going right and trying to see, how do you see them? So if you see your precepts, how do you see them? The 5 precepts, how do you see them? Manjusri replied, I do not hold the view of ordinary beings, the view of holy beings, the view of those who are still learning, or the view of those who have nothing to learn. Nor do I hold the great view, the small view, the view to overcome, the view not to overcome. I hold neither a view nor its opposite view. So already what he's doing is, if this is the self here, he's pulling this out. He's saying none of this. Well, how about the opposite? Even that is gone. There's not a view from a viewpoint of a self or ego personality. It's not this kind of a way. It is mind, right view, that he's using here. Right view has nothing to do with the perceptions of a sentient being. It is mind's own view. So he's saying, Sariputra comes in. Now, Sariputra was always like right next to Manjusri saying, oh, this is good, I like this, or let me be the ombudsman for all of the sentient beings. So let me ask these questions that the sentient beings will ask. Well, like, I don't really understand what you're saying, or hey, that was good job. So Sariputra comes in at this point, and he says, this is how you view the voice hearer vehicle. How do you view the Buddha vehicle? So he's saying, this is how you would practice as a sentient being, but how do you practice with the Buddha vehicle? Manjushri said, I do not see the Dharma of Bodhi. Bodhi is the idea of awakening. So and this is with a little d. I don't see the phenomena of awakening, nor do I see anyone training for Bodhi or attaining a Bodhi. So he's cutting right to the chase and say, it's an illusory sentient being. Mind is just mind. Where is one to attain this and to enter into when everything is mind? And this is important because we were talking about this yesterday, and someone was saying everything is mind, is all the one, but the idea of this one is that there's a saying to even cut that off, which is, if everything returns to the one, where does the one return to? This is very important because what it's saying is that there isn't this transmigration of souls. There is no true transformation. What are you going to transfer to? It is just these appearances that are in mind, but these appearances are mind itself. It's already there. There's no place outside of it, or someplace, some refuge bin that you start sweeping away all of these so-called defilements. You just have to allow the mind to see clearly. This is what we practice, is right view. So as we begin to see things in this way, and it all begins to fit in. So then Sariputra asked Manjusri, what is called the Buddha? How does one observe a Buddha? And Manjusri just cuts right through that. He's seeing him saying, well, what is called the Buddha, and how does one observe a Buddha? Now, this is subject and object. Someone seeing the Buddha separate and apart, and something as the Buddha as something that is an object, and something that is there that one can say, okay, there, if you go down that street right there, you make a right and then a left, and go up the hill, and there's the Buddha sitting there, right there. So that's the kind of response that Sariputra is expecting for him to give. But Manjusri asks, what is self? He just cuts right through to it and says, what is self? Sariputra replied, self is only a name, and an appearance of a name is empty. So he's going right to what's been taught already, that all of these appearances are empty. And then Manjusri says, indeed, indeed, just as self is only a name, so too the Buddha is only a name. Realizing the emptiness of a name is Bodhi. So realizing that all of this is an illusion is the awakening. You tap the TV screen, say, this is just a dream. This is just a fabrication. Now, Ananda tapping the TV screen would say, oh, I see, I understand. None of this is real. It's just the electrical current running through the TV set. So that must be me. So he continues. One should seek the Bodhi without using names. Using names is just without concept. The appearance of Bodhi is free from words. Why? Because words and Bodhi are both empty. Furthermore, Sariputra, you asked me what is called Buddha and how should I observe the Buddha? That which is neither birth nor death, neither names of, nor appearances, and is neither coming nor going, is called the Buddha. As one observes the true reality of one's own body, in the same way one observes the Buddha. So we look at this and we say, you observe the reality of your own body. Is it this body, this flesh? Does it fit in that? No, it can't fit in that. It's neither a name. There's not a Gilbert there. It was born, so this body is certain to die. So that can't be it. It's neither coming nor going. No, and given my age, there's more suspect as to whether I know whether I'm coming or going anyway. More going than coming, I think. In any case, as you look at this, he's saying that which isn't that's the Buddha. As one observes the true reality of one's own body in the same way as one observes the Buddha, only the wise can understand that this is called observing the Buddha. So what is observing the Buddha? Contemplation. When we contemplate, we see things not from a viewpoint of subject and object, from a thought stream, but we observe the Buddha. So when you're sitting on the cushion and you're meditating, you are observing the Buddha, but don't give it a name. Just sit. If you have a method, follow the method. Just keep that method there, but just sit. You don't do anything else. This is called observing the Buddha. The other day I was talking about mind gazing, and it's the same thing. This gazing of mind, one is just gazing. We're aware. Just this way. We don't have to put anything we don't have to take anything out. The mind, we have to return to utilizing the mind in the proper way. It is as if one was in the ocean and was swimming and got stuck in the seaweed. And after a while, you start saying, this world, this life is so hard. I'm always just swimming and dragging the seaweed around with me. But as you realize the seaweed has nothing to do with you, and you begin to see it clearly, the seaweed by its own nature will be removed because it's just an imagining. And one is able to navigate the ocean easily. It's why sometimes I refer to that as a transparent fish in the ocean. And here the ocean is the samadhi. So as you are mind gazing, you're contemplating, the mind can go through the ocean of the mind itself, unimpeded. It's liberated. Wherever it wants to go, it can go. It's free. But as soon as you start adding things to it or trying to take things up in a struggling way, then it becomes very, very difficult. But when we use the mind in the proper way, then everything becomes easy. We continue on. Then Sariputra said to the Buddha, world honored one, Prajnaparamita as produced by Manjusri is not understandable. Oh, excuse me, let me read that again. I miss. Okay. I apologize. Then Sariputra said to the Buddha, world honored one, Prajnaparamita as pronounced by Manjusri is not understandable or knowable to the novice bodhisattva. So it's saying this kind of a Prajnaparamita, it's difficult for novices to understand. All they want to do is stop the baby from crying, and you're trying to look at it and say, you know, that baby has no name. Manjusri then said, not only novice bodhisattvas cannot know it, but even the riders of the two vehicles who have accomplished their undertaking for arhatship or Buddhahood cannot understand or know it. So from the viewpoint of an arhat or a lohan or this particular Buddha, they still cannot see clearly that all of this is just simply mind. So they're showing there's this difference there. And as I talked about this before, sometimes we get these little minor realizations and we believe, oh, I must be enlightened. As soon as you say that, you know you're not, but you still think of that way. Why? Because the ego says, oh, don't pay attention to that. You're enlightened. Trust me, Gilbert, you're enlightened. No, we have to continue to push. And each one is naturally the seaweed will fall off on its own. No one can know the Dharma expounded in this way. No one can know. So it's going back up to what is self and saying this one that you're talking about cannot know it. Why not? Because the appearance of Bodhi cannot be known through such dharmas as seeing, hearing, capturing, thinking, speaking, or listening. So it's talking about through the consciousness, through all these the organs of the body, and something that's a product from the five skandha, it cannot be known through that. So when we look at something and we say, this is a pen. I know that this is a pen. I can call it a pen. I know it. And I know that if I separate it, oh, voila, there's a point there that can produce a line of blue. And this kind of a linear thinking that we have is something, but we cannot know mind in this way. Mind is not a pen. What is mind? Beyond any concept that we could possibly do. The pen is housed in mind, but it is not a concept. It's not a thing. So he's saying that, then he says, because it's none of these things, how can there be an attainer of Bodhi? How can somebody become enlightened? Sariputra asked Manjusri, has not the Buddha in the Dharma realm attained Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi? So he's saying, let me see. I see in the Heart Sutra that it says that that it's this way. That I remember I learned from the Heart Sutra because you told me everything was empty, but I know that it says Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi there. Manjusri replied, no, Sariputra. Why not? Because the world honored one is the Dharma realm with a little d. How can he obtain himself? I'm the Buddha, and I attain Buddha. Wait a minute, weren't you already the Buddha? Well, when did you become the Buddha? There was not a beginning. There's not an end. I'm Buddha. Well, that doesn't make any sense. because it's like trying to balance on this little pin the Buddha realm. It's impossible. It doesn't make any sense. So then so this is what's important, because the world honored one, because the Buddha is the Dharma realm. Verifying the Dharma realm by the means of the Dharma realm would be a contradiction. Sariputra, the appearance of the Dharma realm is Bodhi. So this appearance of phenomena is awakening. I mentioned very early on in these lectures, I said that the Buddhas use the vexations of sentient beings to practice. Well, that's all part of the Dharma, the little d Dharma. And this is why, because it is the Buddha realm. So it is in there. And you go, but I can't think of this. I can't conceive of this. Precisely. It is not possible for entry through some kind of a conception that said this plus this and this and this and this equals awakening. Voila, I'm awakened. If I could do that, I could just print out a formula and give it to you, and you would, you could go along and do whatever you need to do in the day, and you don't have to come back. The only awakening is seeing clearly that the Buddha, and then in this way, one need not return. If you return for the sake of sentient beings, albeit illusory. The emptiness of all dharmas is Bodhi, which is the non-dual and free from differentiation. Sariputra, without differentiation, there is no knower. So if we don't say that this is a black pen and this is a blue pen, without seeing, sorry, I'm trying to get these, there we go. Without seeing these, mind knows. It doesn't have to have someone speak for it and say, oh, Gilbert, I really don't understand this. Can you tell me? And so Gilbert comes in and says, oh, okay. This one over here is a black one and this is a blue one. If you pull the cap, you'll see that it will do that, unless the caps were mixed, and then you can mess everything up. But I don't need that. Mine will tell you right there. You don't have to give it a name. Why? But it's part of the Dharma realm. The Buddha knows why, because it's part of the Buddha realm. Without a knower, there are no words. Without words, there is neither existence nor non-existence, neither knowing nor not knowing. This is true for all dharmas. Why? Because the dharmas cannot be identified by places which imply a definite nature. For example, the sinful appearance of the 5 rebellious acts is inconceivable. Why? Because their true reality of dharmas is indestructible. Thus, the sin of committing rebellious acts has no self-essence. So in these things, it's going and it's taking it to these extremes and saying, even if you did these things, all of this is still the Buddha realm. It's not separate and apart from it. And then it's going to go into more deeper stuff in a moment. But so we'll stop there with this analysis. But what you're looking at is you're seeing clearly that how mind is. And so we don't search for it in a word in a page, but those words can be a turning phrase, just like the one where it says, because the world honored one is the Dharma realm. Then there's like an absorption in that moment that one can say, whoa. Now that might not have done it for you, but to some of you it might have. And but there is what we call turning phrases, because then we begin to look at it. And that's what the beauty is of these sutras, is because it takes you through, and it is seen, and it's kind of like lacing a boot. And you just little by little, you put the shoelace in the eyelet, tighten it a little bit, shoelace, tight, until you get to the final part, and you tighten it, boom, it's there. And it's this way because you're beginning to see precisely this progression of deconstructing the Dharma realm as a separate entity and deconstructing phenomena. And so what it's doing is it's letting you practice in a way where it's the opposite of the 12 nidanas. You're working your way backwards through the nidanas until you finally get to the very first one, which is ignorance. Ignorance is the ignorance of not knowing that the self does not exist. So when we look at this and we cut to the chase and we ask the question, what is self? All of the other ones, progressions, are seen as an illusion. We're clear about it. And the Buddha taught that from the very, very beginning. There's this ignorance. And when we look at the things and we see it and we say, oh, boo-hoo, I'm suffering. I have this pain. I have that pain. This person left me. This is going to happen. You know, I got this grade, you know, at work or on a report card, or my car doesn't start, whatever it is. We see the things very clearly and say, this is standard for this samsaric world. And we realize that. And that's an important aspect of this. And we begin to deconstruct this self. We're so anxious and interested in deconstructing this world, saying this is not real. I remember a long, long time ago when my son Ananda was a young man and he was in kindergarten, and he would come to my lectures and he would sit there. So his first meditation cushion was about this big. One of my students made it for him, but he'd go to the kindergarten. He'd go, "You're not real. You're in a dream and you're an illusion." And they were so frightened. The kids, he frightened the kids at the kindergarten because he was so sure about it, looking at them and saying this. So that the principal, you know, called me to tell me about that Nanda was frightening the children. The good thing was that he was a Buddhist, so he was getting a kick out of it. But the kids were going, because he said it with so much conviction. They, in that moment, with a young child that incapable of processing, he really shocked them. And which is good, because maybe, you know, as they get older, they'll remember that and do that. So when Shifu heard about this, Shifu gave him a huatou. What was my original face before I was born? And this is very apropos to look at, to say, what was my original face? Because if someone is going and negating that, then we can't just negate something. We have to see precisely what is there. And this original face before you're born is not of the self. It is just mind, and this mind is the Buddha. There's no time frame, no nothing. It is just the Buddha mind. It's hard for us to deal with that because we don't know. We can't know. But nevertheless, this is the way it is. So when we sit to meditate, this is how we meditate. When we sit, we rest and relax the body. We bring up the method. We become aware of everything that is happening, whether one sees it extrinsically in the environment or in the mind environment. So those are not two things. They are just one. In contemplation, what is perceived as a Dharma mind environment with a little d is not different than what is arising in mind or the differentiation that is occurring in mind, that too is seen as the mind environment, this Dharma realm. In this way, there is a self-absorption. So there's this person, this Gilbert, and he's trying so hard to get away from this. But as the body is sitting in meditation, and he's trying to say, wait, phew. Naturally, this notion of self, an ego, a personality, or a life and being is absorbed in mind, along with everything else that is considered the Dharma realm. Boom. It is restored to its rightful place. In this way, it is just phenomena appearing in mind. One sees that, but the mind looks at it and says, this is just phenomena. This is just phenomena. In 6 months, this will be in a trash can because it'll be used up or dried up. It is not really permanent. Same thing for the body. We see the thing so clearly. So as we're sitting to meditate, now we know what we're doing when we're sitting on the cushion. If you don't know this, get off the cushion. You're only going to make the body hurt, but you're not going to do this. If you practice in the right way, I guarantee you that the entry into mind, you already have the ticket. So you as you're there and you're entering, the admission is already there. It's already prepaid for you. All you've got to do is just sit and meditate, contemplate. Everything that is there in the environment, whether it's thoughts that are arising or the external environment, it is absorbed. This self-absorption, it is absorbed into the self-nature. Is there something apart? This pen cannot say that it's because it goes outside here, it is no longer there. It is clear that this pen is within mine, and we're clear about it, and we know that. And that which sees it is not Gilbert, it is mind. And when we sit in this way and we sit to meditate, then we can meditate properly. All we have to do is just sit there, absorb. No thinking. Everything that comes up, let it. Whatever is there, the dog barking, the cars going by, a television set, whatever it is, the mind is absorbing it all. This is called a single-minded purpose. So anyway, I think I used up my allotted time for the lecture. So can we have some questions? Is that possible, Angela?
Yes, of course. So
okay.
Please, you can raise your hand and we'll unmute you, or you can post your questions. Today we have a very profound lecture. I'm sure there will be questions. So this is from Facebook by Eva. How do I know I am doing the right practice during the meditation? Is there a way to evaluate?
Yes, I just from what I was telling you in terms of this this mind absorption, you should see if there is any kind of a linear or sequential thinking there. If there's a linear or sequential thinking, so you're sitting there and saying, oh, I haven't had a thought. That's linear and sequential. But if one just sits and the mind is absorbed, little by little, the samadhi from this is incredible. Do the meditation right. Don't worry about, am I doing it right or wrong? Just stay on the method. Don't think that you know that you have a right or wrong to it. Just follow the instructions, and you won't have to worry. Most assuredly, you will get there. It is as if I'm laying out a map on how to get to somewhere. If you follow the instructions on the map, you will get there. You don't have to worry about how long it's going to take you to get there, and you don't stop for the amusements along the way. You just have the heart of the practice, and you try your hardest. Most assuredly, you will get there. You don't have to worry about where you're at on the path to getting there. Okay, this is what the Buddha said. In terms of it, those who follow the path most assuredly will get there. Those who don't, they will not get there. So you have to have this faith in the Buddha, faith in mind, and faith in the practice, and faith in yourself that will happen. Okay, next question. I think Afasha had asked a question too.
Can drowsiness, sleepiness be absorbed by observing them?
It can, but you have to overcome it, like I say, because that's habitual. When you get to a very deep samadhi state, your body and mind have never experienced that before. And so it may likely go into a default thing where you'll become drowsy. But if you get into the proper samadhi, that samadhi has an incredible energy to it, a very vibrancy to it that's different. So you have to maintain the practice, but it's difficult because in some ways you're trying to overcome the habitual tendencies of going, this is so incredible relaxation. This is so amazing, because it's like eating a sweet candy that you've never tasted before, but you want more and more. But it's not in this way. When you do this, it's one flavor, and it's the flavor of mind. But in that, if you do this correctly, the energy will be different than essentially turning off the lights. It is not in this way. You have to keep the mind very, very vibrant. Okay.
So this is from Tia. I started my practice with counting breath, but ended up controlling my breath. So Fashi suggested me to try the observing the breath. I have been trying that for a while. No more controlling breath, but since I don't have number to focus on, lots of wandering thoughts, how should I observe the breath? Thank you.
Without self. Without the idea of there being someone that's observing the breath. The observation, actually, what they gave you was almost like mo chao, although you have this little tiny breath in front of the sun illumination. It is difficult to hold it unless you abandon the notion of a self observing the breath. So, irregardless of whether you breathe or you don't breathe in an intentional way, your body's going to breathe for you. So there's nothing for you to do in that moment, observing the breath. There's nothing. So you don't have to will yourself to breathe. The self is not even there. So with this kind of a recognition, then you begin to use this method. What I would suggest is that you cut back on the time that you meditate. Get the method right. So if you need, and this is for all of you in all your methods, I'd rather have you practice for 5 minutes and perfect the practice than the practice for a half an hour or an hour just wallowing in your selfish notions or conceptions. It's better for you to get it right. Add time little by little. Don't say, well, I can do this, because this is what Shifu was saying, that one is practicing their legs. They're not practicing the Dharma. They're not practicing. They can cross their legs and they can sit, but yet that doesn't help you. Get the method right, and hold on to the method. And if for some reason after 5 minutes your brain has so many thoughts that are flying around, then get up before you start perfecting a poor practice. Causes and conditions never fail. So if you sit for 5 minutes and it's good, fine. Next time for sure, you'd probably say that you're going to be able to sit again. But if you sit for 5 minutes perfect and then 25 minutes of thinking of thoughts, that's what you'll get every single time, because that's the seeds that you're planting. So it's better for you to work and perfect your practice and then add time. Even if you've been practicing for 5, 10, 20 years, don't be so proud that you say, well, you know, I've been sitting for that. Well, indeed, if you've been sitting that long like that, why haven't you made the awakening? Something's missing, right? It's not the time in on the cushion. It is the quality of the meditation and the utilization of right view that makes the difference. That's what I essentially peddle. You know, what I sell is right view and knowing how mind works. Then it will work. It doesn't matter what method that's there, it will work in this way. Okay, next question.
So this is from Scott. Maybe you can ask Ian Charles Scott, should one contemplate death before drifting off to sleep? Do you mean death or breath? Maybe you can unmute and clarify your question. So this is from Ian Charles Scott.
Well, it would be contemplation. So if you're contemplating the breath, not contemplating death, there's ways to get into the practice by contemplating death or the decay of the body. Those are more Theravada in their nature, and they can be useful, but we kind of cut to the chase. So it's not contemplating death. It's saying that it's contemplating the breath. So contemplating the breath is just simply sitting.
So sorry, he just clarified that he meant contemplating death. Should one contemplate death before drifting off to sleep?
You can use that. If this is a way to do that, then that's fine. Again, this is more of a Theravada method. Nothing wrong with it. And contemplating that this idea of death, it begins for one person to say that it is that you're utilizing, and it's one tool that one can use to look at this world and to see it as real or not. It doesn't matter whether you're drifting off to sleep. You can do that method, and that may produce some benefits to you if you do it in the right way. It is an accepted practice.
So I have a question, if I can ask.
Okay.
You mentioned that so I guess for enlightened people, enlightened beings, you use the analogy before that they're coursing through like an invisible fish. So you sort of mentioned it today that they're coursing in this ocean, and then they're like this current. So I'm just trying to understand that. So it's because there's no boundary between themselves and everything else. So in a way, the ocean is the being, is the person. So, but I don't understand why there's still this invisible fish. What are you trying to convey, that that's a function that they're carrying, or there's something still going on, or I'm just trying to understand the analogy, or the ocean is, I mean, at that point, the ocean is already entirely them.
It's kind of in this way, Angela. when I was giving the lecture and talking about this, I knew precisely your question before you asked it that was arising in your mind. It doesn't mean that I have special powers or anything. It's just that your question, your mind is part of the ocean. So the fish, this transparent fish, is just mind. And so it just can wherever it is, there is no abiding in it because it appears in many, many different ways. And as it appears, it is going through the this deep prajna paramita. What is the deep prajna paramita? The Dharma realm, the phenomena itself. So I say it's a transparent fish because it's not really a fish, but I'm using that as a component of the knowing aspect of mind, the root Z, the DHZI. Pardon me because I cannot say it properly in Chinese, but it's the knowing aspect of mind of the Ru, of the Ru Jing. But all of that is there, and it's connected. And this is something that's very interesting. And I think you should contemplate that more, because that is kind of how would you say, something that you have to sort through, and it will lead you to a deeper realization as to what I said. Because I say these things, although they're analogies, but nevertheless there's something there that you can benefit from. So I strongly recommend that you do that. It's a very, very good question.
Thank you. So is there any more questions? If there's no more questions,
there's a Nicholas.
There's a Nicholas John. You can unmute yourself.
Yeah, I had a question about your analogy with the pen. There was a point at which you took a pen out and you pulled it off, and so like you can pull off the pen, you can see the mark there, and then you said that but the mind is not like that. Can you clarify your point? I didn't quite understand what you meant there, or what your point was there.
Yeah, it's similar to what I had said before. That to me was a very turning story, which is Matsu and Baisong and the ducks flying by, and where the ducks are flying by, and Matsu asked Baisong, where are the ducks going to? And he was going to point to where they went. And then that's when Matsu twisted his nose. So when we say that the pen is here, but if we say the pen is out here, it's not really out there. It's still nevertheless within mind, even though it is not within the I consciousness. It's still somewhere in mind, and there's no locale for that or temporal in mind, because mind essentially is the Dharma realm. And so but it's not something that goes by and passes and then passes out of the Dharma realm. That moment in which the ducks were flying by are preserved in mind. And it's not temporal where it says, okay, it happened, that there's a past, present, and future. It's beyond that. It's inconceivable. Those things are mind, and we don't look at it. And so you could say that, like the Alaya Vijnana from the Yogacara school, that everything is preserved in there. And so this storehouse consciousness has everything. And so this is what I'm explaining is that something that goes out of the consciousness in that moment, whether it's the I consciousness or the mind consciousness, nevertheless it does not lose its properties, but its property is it's fundamentally empty because it's part of the Dharma realm. So we begin to disassociate from simply seeing through this kind of a five skandha consciousness, that we begin to see the world through mind consciousness. We use the five skandha consciousness, but we take that with a grain of salt and say, okay, this is a consciousness from this body. It's very, very limited. And it's like getting a radio that only has 5 bands, you know, that you can use, or 6 bands. And but you can have this radio that has everything. You could use the analogy that in this moment where I'm sitting here, beyond my physical consciousness, there are so many radio waves that are coming through that if I was able to tune to them, I could hear the different stations that are playing. But it's beyond the ability of this body to be able to see this. Now imagine if it's mind, because it's within mind, mind has total accessibility to all phenomena. It knows it and it doesn't interfere with its function. So hopefully that will help you, if not confuse you more. Anything else? Nothing? I see Meili there. Harry, you on board with this? Okay, good. Good to see you all. No more questions? I saw some from one of the Sangha, but I didn't see the question being presented, but it's okay.
I think that was Changxun Fasi posted Eva's question. That was on Facebook. Yeah.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. Thank
that
you.
was the first question.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm glad that we're able to do this. Little by little, what I'm doing is incorporating this, what I call more profound Dharma of right view, into the practice and of meditation, so that you know exactly that what you're doing when you're sitting on the cushion. And there's a Mei.
Oh, we just got a Mei Fang. Mei Fang, you can unmute yourself.
Hello? Are you there?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I so my question is during so I have trying to explore how can we apply Buddhism in daily life. And so I have a question is that so while we are practicing, sometimes we need to deal with our karma, right? So we will meet different persons, different events in life, and I'm always a little bit not sure or a little bit confused, like what is the principle that we should follow to decide, say, when some people or some event appears and we need to say yes or no. We need to say, please go ahead, or don't do this. So like, is there a way we can like, we can kind of follow when we engage with people, especially they are not following the spiritual path. And
yeah, it's difficult because in this world, as you begin to practice, then you start realizing that the people around you have very strong egos. The egos sometimes can be very very strong in their sense of self or self-worth. Other times the ego can be something where a person has no self-worth, but that's even a stronger ego, where it says they've devalued themselves so much that they're dwelling in their own suffering. We see all of these things as a product of causes and conditions. This is the part that's most important in your practice, is that as you get up off the cushion, you realize everything that's appearing is appearing in mind precisely because of causes and conditions. So as we become aware of it, then we become more tolerant of people's weaknesses. At that point, we see things as just simply that this is the cause and conditions that are appearing. We may not know the cause that started it. Little by little, we begin to see the causes that we started. Sometimes we see the conditions, and sometimes we'll see the possibility of new conditions based on what we're doing in this moment via body, speech, and mind. Little by little, we rely more on our wisdom and not on our differentiation or our personal impressions, our likes and dislikes. But we view it kind of stepping back a little bit and seeing the whole scene, including your own ego that's arising, and say, don't do this, Meihan, don't do this, because if you say this, and this is going to happen. And eventually it will be where Mei Fang is just seen there, and she's just simply a vehicle for the proper practice, and whatever she does is in accordance with Buddha Dharma. But until that time, we begin to practice by don't let our emotions govern what we're doing. Doesn't mean that you don't have emotions or you can't have emotions. It's just that we're very, very mindful about what we say, think, or do. And so that we are able to help more people in this way. The more we disassociate from the idea of picking and choosing, the better it becomes with this. The only choosing you should choose is to choose the Buddha in every moment, just to practice very, very clearly. And it will come. It just be patient, and it will come. You've already started the first part. And that first part is essentially that you have recognize that there's a dissatisfaction in the present moment, whether it's your dissatisfaction or another person's dissatisfaction.
Yes.
That you have to see that. Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
And it will work.
Yes.
Okay.
So from Ian Scott, can one put oneself amongst intolerable egos intentionally in order to release ourselves from reacting to them, to be free from our own egos? Can one put oneself amongst intolerable egos intentionally in order to release ourselves from reacting to them and be free from our egos?
Well, I would start with your own self and seeing the intolerability of your own self. And then if that happens, and if it's kind of like saying, physician, cure yourself. So you are the cure. After that, then wherever you're at, you don't pick and choose. You just see things manifesting. So they're no longer intolerable. They're just something that is manifesting, and it's just something that the mind addresses naturally via the function of the mind. So it's no longer intolerable. The intolerability comes from one's own ego. Once you let that go, then it's fine. Sometimes I'm put in a position where there's people around me that either want to cause harm to me or to do things, or as an attorney, they're the opposing party. But I never see them as a person that that is opposite me. I realize through my own practice why whatever conduct they are doing or saying arises. And in this way, then one tolerates everything simply through wisdom. We don't need to throw ourselves in the lion's den to test our martial arts practice. That's foolish. So likewise, we don't surround ourselves with a bunch of people, and it would be like somebody going and dressing up in a Klansman suit and going to a Black Lives Matter rally. Why would you do that? Doesn't make any sense. All of that is discrimination. So we just release ourselves from all of those kinds of viewpoints. I think there was an...
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you. So if there's no more questions, thank you for a wonderful talk today. I think I'll have to listen to it to get a deeper understanding. So let's join palm. Thank you, Gilbert. Bow.
Okay. Omitofu.
Thank you, Gilbert.
Well, thank you, teacher.
Thank you,
Gilbert.
Gilbert. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Omitopo.
Good to see you
Thank
all.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gilbert.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Gilbert.
Thank you, Gilbert. Thank you.
Omitopo.
Thank you.
you, Gilbert.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome, all of you.
Appreciate it.
Practice well. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.